And that brings us into the news review proper. And Noella Kariniale is here, and both of us will be sharing the conversations, and she'll introduce our guests to you.
Right, so joining us for the newspaper review is Victoria Bright. She's a lawyer, an entrepreneur, and former legal advisor to former President Kufuor. She will be joining us via Zoom. We also have James Kwabena-Bamford Jr. He's the CEO of the Census, and of course he's seated right here, flanked by two beautiful ladies. He must be feeling very lucky this morning. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. I feel very natural. Born among women. I'm flanked by two women from birth.
Oh, okay.
I see. Two older than me and two younger than me. So
good for you.
I'm in a natural setting.
Let's try and see if Victoria's microphone and everything works well. Good morning, Vicky.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
We are fabulous. Thanks for joining us all the way from another continent. So let's start with you then. You know, we usually give our guests a minute or two to walk us through any reflections they may have on a topical issue. What's caught your attention over the weekend up till now?
Well, actually, nothing to do with politics. I saw an interesting reportage about an onion seller who's suing Telecel for 2 million cedis. Because allegedly her, a picture of her image has been plastered all over billboards in a commercial of some kind. And so it's interesting because we don't often get these kinds of cases here. And for me as a lawyer, it's interesting because I don't know whether many people know that your image actually qualifies as personal data under data protection and privacy laws. And also generally using someone's image for advertising without permission, especially on a billboard, is an infringement of a copyright. So I'm interested, and it will be interesting to see how the case, progresses.
Interesting, Professor Bonfair. Or should I say Mr. Bonfair, I should say.
Doc?
It's fine. I'm not a professor.
I'm elevated. Maybe you should consider that then.
Well, it's a rank in your progression as an academic and intellectual, if you so desire and commit yourself to. We're not there yet, and I'm happy to be here. My reflections have been more on some work that the Center for Citizenship, Constitutional and Electoral Systems, succeeded in coming out with a codes for citizenship, and what they have dubbed 11 commandments of citizenship, largely drawing on Article 41 of the 1992 Constitution, and namely patriotism, loyalty, unity, respect, diligence, stewardship, community, service, cooperation, honesty, and above all, dedication to the cause of Ghana, and to engage in conservation for sustainable environment. If all citizens of this country will abide by the dictates or the pointers and guides that we find in Article 41, be the president, ministers of state, ordinary citizens and workers of this country, I am sure many of the problems that we complain consistently about will be things of the past. Because they call for us to live certain lifestyles dedicated to conserving the environment, ensuring that we don't pollute water, ensuring that if we are engaging in farming activity, our areas of work, we don't overdo things to the detriment of the future. The moment you talk about sustainability, you are thinking about those who are yet to be born. And so we will not engage in illegal mining for it to become an albatross around our necks, and we are asking how to fight it at the expense of the taxpayer.
Right.
Where are those doing it? So these are things that we should reflect about, that citizenship is a key to good leadership.
Is this accessible to the general public?
Yes, Article 41 of the 1992 Constitution.
No, you listed some things of...
we are sharing them. I'll share them with you.
Okay.
And I think maybe you can project them. I've shared them with Kingsley,
our
producer. So maybe he can project them before
in the course of the conversation, right? So let's get straight into the newspapers. It's been a very newsy weekend, Noella, and I know your eye has caught a particular story that you want to start off with. So let's get right into it.
In fact, because he mentioned illegal mining, there's a story, an interesting one here I wanted us to focus on. But before then, let me share with us some of the top stories on the news center. It says Kenya, Japan rejects top-down elections, religious ethnic politics harmful. That's from Dr. Baumia.
Is that the news center?
Yeah, that's the news center. Also, Republic Bank to train SLCB staff under landmark MOU, and 10 of top 11 causes of death killing more men in Ghana. 2.9 million deaths not registered. That's coming from also the news center. And Coca urges unity at constituency chairman conference. But the story I am referring to is on page 4. It says, and this is coming from the Chinese ambassador, who says that Ghanaians recruit Chinese into galamsey. So let me read, the details, and then, we can deliberate on that. It says the Chinese ambassador to Ghana, Mr. Tong Defa, has shifted the spotlight in Ghana's ongoing illegal mining crisis, arguing it is Ghanaians themselves who recruit and enable Chinese nationals to participate in galamsey, not the other way around. And he challenged the prevailing narrative that blames Chinese nationals indiscriminately for the scourge, insisting instead that local actors play a central role in facilitating and profiting from illegal mining. Mr. Bonfair, and this is a foreign national, Chinese ambassador to Ghana, saying that it is us Ghanaians that actually recruit them and not the other way around, as we've always believed. What do you make of this?
Well, I think that for those who have, followed my engagement and activism in the extractive sector over the years or decades, the position is very clear. No foreigner knows our land and our minerals better than us. If you take the surveys and the geological surveys in particular, that point to as far back as 1913 to 1925, when the geologists at the time discovered that the entire land bed of this country has gold beneath. And so if we are not careful and we want to mine, even underneath this building, we could discover that there's some deposits there. And so if we don't choose to have no-go areas, we might mine our entire selves. Now, which foreigner can come in and go out there without any information? Don't forget that the references I've made go far back. And so the availability of some of that information to foreigners is also there. And with the advance of technology today, someone can come with devices and be able to go in. However, nobody can go into any part of this country's land and operate without being seen by the indigenous. Now, when we see that, what do? What's our reaction? And I always say that unless and until our people, ourselves, we choose that we no longer want to do certain things, we'll be taken for granted. And I agree with him that Chinese on their own cannot. Don't forget that small-scale mining, which is the conduit they use, is limited to Ghanaians. No foreigner can come and engage in small-scale mining. So how do they procure the licenses? And there are 4 licenses involved, at least to the best of my reading and understanding of the mining sector. You have, first, the reconnaissance license, which is exploratory in nature. Yeah. You just go and
recce.
Recce, reconnaissance. Then you have got an exploratory license, which is granted to actually go deeper to and understand the quantum of gold that there is and which areas it is to cover and so on and so forth. So you have to see the magnitude also of the damage that would result from there. Then you have got an environmental impact assessment license, which is the third. It is after that environmental impact assessment, which would tell the cost, cost-benefit analysis, then a mining lease is granted. At any of these stages, you know, the law is clear as to how and who can be granted the license. So yes, we have Chinese here, we can blame them all we want, but the truth of the matter is that without our complicity, foreigners cannot. Now, what are the factors? What are the factors? I don't think that we have managed our land regime very well. Our chiefs and elders, and so on and so forth. And the law, the constitution of this country says that those who exercise right as family heads on behalf of, and family lands are owned by families. As for the chiefs and stool lands and so on and so forth, it's for administrative purposes. In Ghana, land ownership is in the hands of individuals and families. So those who exercise leadership or who exercise right over them by signing as a pension and all that, the constitution says that from time to time they are to account to their people. How many of our people account for their stewardship over the lands? So the administration and management of land issues come in. But what I want to say on this matter is that if we don't change the land regime, the law regime on mining in Ghana, it won't work. And this is what I mean. You have the law in Article 257, Clause 6, and the Minerals and Mining Law 2006, Act 703, say that, Section 1, if you find any mineral in Ghana, wherever, that mineral belongs to the state, and it is held in trust for and on behalf of the people by the president. What it means automatically then is that the state can enter that property or that land forcibly. You are only entitled to compensation. And 100% since you have been denied ownership, but its exploitation will result into damages that only you will suffer. I don't think I'll be happy with that. And we have done this over the years. So some of us are proposing that change the law on ownership of the mineral. Rather than give 100% to the state and say that the president should hold it in trust, and the president can give anybody license to go wherever and mine without even the consent of the people, change the ownership. Make it 60 or 50% to the state. Give 30% to the landowners, or if you like 25, and give the local authorities or local assembly another 25. Sweetie, I tell you that the people will protect the exploitation with their necks because they know that you have a share in it. Not that you come and give them what we call royalties, which is often paid in wherever we want, and it doesn't really get to the people. But we must change the law.
Right.
A legal regime on mining.
Okay.
And ownership.
Before we go to Victoria Bright, what about that strategy that the government proposed about circulating the commanders, the police, what's it called? Yeah, commanders in charge of particular areas. So if there's galamsey happening in your community or your district, they're taking you out and bringing somebody in. Does that help? Because then you are accountable to the people and to the government as to how you manage to let the people enter the land and degrade our forests.
I like to quote my good friend, the late Justice Professor A.K.P. Kluje. You see, we always want to deal with the after effect. I'm talking about preventive.
Okay.
What you are proposing is the after effect.
Well, not what I'm proposing.
No, not you, but what most people are saying.
Yeah.
So it's the after effect. Let's deal with the causal factors.
Okay.
Before we get there. But you see, if the code of citizenship that we are outlined, patriotism, loyalty, honesty, sincerity, these are guiding a police officer. And the police officer, male or female, is conducting him or herself well. What would be the need to transfer that person?
All right, let's go to Vicky Bright now. And Noella, Vicky, so it looks like they say, the Chinese are saying...
So they're saying that Ghanaians, contrary to what we believe,
we are responsible.
Yeah, we are actually responsible.
I agree with them.
They say they don't have the legal capacity to.
And it actually gets interesting. It says galamsey cannot be eliminated. That's still coming from the ambassador.
So, well, that one I disagree with him. They will not. You see, that's where they get complacent.
Right.
Because it's in their interest.
Right. But before you come in with that, let's hear from Ms. Victoria Bright.
Hi. Yeah. No, well, it's interesting because clearly Ghana is our country, right? It's not China. I cannot get up, you cannot get up and go to China and just start mining, in somewhere in the country where there's mineral resources. And the same principle applies to our country. Nobody can get up and just start mining. And Kwabena has been through the various licenses and permits that you need to mine anywhere in Ghana. So, he's right in the sense that Chinese nationals can't just walk into any forest reserves in Ghana and start mining. They will need Ghanaians to participate in that activity. Ghanaians would need to be complicit. And by Ghanaians, I mean that, every area here in this country, in Ghana, has a traditional ruler of some sort, So if you go to a village to mine or a region to mine, there will be some traditional authorities there. That land can either be stool land or family land. And in each case, it's controlled by Ghanaians. The stool, the chiefs are Ghanaian, the families are Ghanaian. So it is true that Ghanaians allow this to happen. Ghanaians allow this to happen. And we all know that these small-scale licenses can only be issued to Ghanaians, Ghanaian nationals. So clearly, either Ghanaians are actually obtaining the license on behalf of, allowing themselves to be used as proxy to obtain the license on behalf of some of these foreign nationals, or they are doing some kind of JV with them, or they are obtaining the licenses in their own right and then doing some JV with them, maybe getting them to bring the machines, or because these excavators are not cheap, they are very expensive. Even the second-hand ones are extremely expensive. So we are to blame, and at the end of the day, it's not China that's been degraded; it's Ghana. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at the effects on Ghanaians. So why would we do this to our own people? If you allow someone to exploit you, they will exploit you. And it's not just on a country-to-country basis, it's in human relations. People treat you how you allow them to treat you. So my question, and the thing that I always keep wondering about, is how Ghanaians can be so cruel to each other. I mean, why are you doing this? What level of greed will drive you to actually wreak havoc on your own citizenry? Because the impact of this, as we all now know, is very far-reaching. Quite apart from the destruction to our forest reserves, and I understand 44 out of the 200 and whatever it is, 80 or so, 80 something, are now completely gone. And if we allow this to continue, we know the water, Ghana Water has complained that it will get to a point where they cannot even purify the water anymore. Some of us, probably all of us by now, are consuming some level of mercury or the other, whether you're sitting in Accra or you're in Dumpa or wherever. So, and children are being born with defects. So there are health conditions, there are all sorts of... Little kids are getting their periods at 6 years old, 8 years old, and there are a lot of kidney. We have all these renal problems, and some of it has been traced back to this galamsey issue. So the effects are so far-reaching on us, and yet consistently, Ghanaians are actually doing this. So I don't know why we just don't, why we do this to each other. So I don't blame the Chinese ambassador at all.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I don't. Because it's our country, and if we're allowing ourselves to, if we are hell-bent on destroying our country and causing health problems for our citizenry, what has it got to do with China or with any other country? It's us. It's on us.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Victoria Bright. Well, we've now been joined by Mustafa Bande. He's late. What happened? You were caught in traffic?
They're late.
I think I was caught up in a bit of traffic.
Okay.
I caused the traffic.
I had to obey the laws without having to break sin.
I see. You're looking smart this morning.
Thank you. Of course, Kabila is here.
Oh, okay. I mean, we've been discussing...
I have to distinguish between his being in opposition and my being in government.
Anyway.
Well, so Mustafa Bande is Deputy Director of Operations at the Office of the Presidency, and he's joining us now. But Noella, we're discussing something. You can put it in.
Of course. I'm sure you've been following the conversation, Mustafa. It's about the Chinese ambassador to Ghana actually stating that, contrary to what we believe, that the Chinese are responsible for a significant number of illegal mining activities. They say that it's actually Ghanaians that recruit them. And he also says that galamsey cannot be eliminated. And his reason is quite interesting. He says, instead of us to focus on eliminating galamsey, we should rather look at how we protect the environmental consequences.
Well, first of all, good morning and good morning to our cherished listeners, including Madame on the Zoom. I think that we cannot have this conversation conclusively without looking at making references to the past. And I've said that in this country we've had illegal mining issues for decades. But the awakening came when all of us decided that the effects are so high, there was a need to fight same. In the last 8 years, the mentality of the Chinese ambassador coincides with what President Akufo-Addo left us as Ghanaians. Because much as we're willing to fight illegal mining, President Akufo-Addo actually went into a hidden partnership with the Chinese, where our forest reserves, particular, was given on a silver platter to these people, including officials in government. And what is even more dangerous is that they didn't have the temerity to do, responsible mining. What is illegal about mining is your adherence to the laws regulating mining, i.e. the Minerals Commission regulations and then the EPA regulations. They did so with flagrant disregard to these laws, where if you check in the last 8 years, the number of excavators imported in this country is unprecedented. And all of these excavators were sent to our forest reserves without, one, any regard to the forest itself, two, without any deliberate, steps to ensure that through the Ministry of Lands, through Minerals Commission and through EPA, these mining activities that President Akufo-Addo allowed to extend to our forest reserves was regulated. It was free for all for his appointees and with his concurrence. Here we have come, 5 months, 6 months down the line. We have not yet prosecuted the individuals who have gone into our forest reserve because, mind you, if you are given a mining lease to mine in the forest reserve, it ties you into ensuring that you do responsible mining. So much as we are, at the neck of Chamanun to me for illegal mining, the same should apply to whether you are a Chinese or any other individual who was given a mining lease to mine in the forest reserve, and we are all aware that they've not done responsible mining, particularly reclamation and reforestation. Now, the MPP suddenly expect that...
Mustafa, before you continue, I just want to acknowledge the MCE for Cape Coast Metropolitan Assembly, George Justice Arthur. We'll be discussing that massive demolition exercise happening in Cape Coast. So, Mr. Justice Arthur, welcome to the program. Stay with us. We'll come to you in a bit. Okay, go ahead.
I am aware that in the last 5 months, there have been some surgical military intervention in our forest reserves led by the Minister for Defense to recover or to reclaim these forests from persons who've been given licenses to mine in these forest reserves. I'm also aware that the current Minister for Interior, Honorable Muchaka Mubarak, vigorously is seizing excavators with a regulation to try and, control importation, movement of excavators in and within mining regions, such that the authorities or government authorities will be aware of where a particular excavator is being sent to, so that we can monitor their activities. I am also aware that the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources is trying to reorganize what we call small-scale mining to ensure that whatever they do is in compliance with our laws and whatever is required to do to protect our environment.
That sort of agrees with what the Chinese ambassador said.
Well, of course.
We should focus on the aftermath, fixing the aftermath, rather than solving the galamsey.
I will not. No, that comment should not be coming from the Chinese ambassador, because you see, the Chinese are an integral part of the threat on our environment as far as mining is concerned. So it doesn't lie in his mouth to say these things, because in the last 6 months, majority of the people who have been caught in illegal mining are Chinese. And when the minister tried to, extradite them, they get offended. Because when you have your nationals coming into our country to leave us with these devastating effects of irresponsible mining, when in your country you cannot do that, you should be worried. Just as government of Ghana is worried and trying to deal with the issue as a social security matter, where we have to ensure that livelihood continues, but we protect our environment and our vegetation. It shouldn't be coming from the Chinese ambassador. I'm saying that the Chinese, with President Akufo-Addo, are the ones who have left us with this greatest devastation in the last 8 years. And I have been advocating that any individual who have been given a list to mine, we should have police and a combined unit of intelligence officers going into the communities to investigate and ascertain the persons who have mined, destroyed our streams, prosecute those individuals. Now, I am also aware that the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources have been introducing what we call reorganizing of what the MPP brought. They call it, they have a name for it. They are community mining.
Okay.
We are going into some sort of cooperative mining, where small scale will no longer be an individual, but a group of small-scale miners coming together, take a particular concession, they are being regulated to mine. You cannot get up and go and say that you have banned mining completely, when we all do know that even in the small-scale mining, it is not everybody that is doing illegal mining. There are individuals who are mining small-scale, but doing so responsibly without destroying water bodies.
Again, let me interject at this point. That's why in the lead up to election 2024, the demands were pause all small-scale mining to restructure it. That didn't happen. Repeal LI 2462. That hasn't happened. We're talking about an amendment as we speak. Declare some sort of temporary state of emergency. That didn't happen. Yeah. So, it lies within our hands as Ghanaians to question you and say that why aren't you doing the things that you agreed to lead up to the election now that you're in office?
Look, as far as I'm concerned, President Mahama and our government have given fidelity to commitment to fight illegal mining. I know that because the number of excavators that have been impounded in the last 1 month are a lot. If you check with the Ghana Police Service, and most of these people are persons who are mining. So you may not necessarily have stopped mining, but you are identifying places where they are mining illegally and decommissioning the tools that they use to mine. And one of such tools has to do with excavators. It cannot all be done in a day. But I think that if we have had this commitment in the last 8 years, our government would have built upon what was done in the last 8 years. But we are here starting from ground zero, where we have to deal with the challenges that will come from our own party, plus what President Akufo-Addo and his government have left. And that is very enormous. You, Joy FM, you did documentaries on these things. Does that mean that after change of government, the devastation is suddenly taken away? It compounds rather. Whatever has been done, the pits that were dug and left unattended to in the last 8 years, are still pits that give us devastation. The mining that block the flow of river bodies and streams. We have not yet invested money to go and straighten, to trench these streams to ensure that they are flowing. And so most of the rivers are now stagnant.
So in summary, are you saying that the government is taking this fight as seriously as the Ghanaian
Look, President Mahama has made it very clear. President Mahama has made it very clear that one, no government appointee should be involved in mining. Let's talk of, small-scale mining or illegal mining. You didn't see that same commitment in the last 8 years because President Akufo-Addo actually sanctioned it. He supervised it where his appointees were miners. And we have evidence of these things all over the place. Right. Number two, the government have made it very clear that whoever is engaged in illegal mining will face the law. So it is up to all of us to expose persons and individuals within and outside government who are engaged or who support illegal mining to continue. But as far as I'm concerned, I just told you the Minister of Defense's commitment and contribution. I just told you the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources commitment and contribution. I just also told you for the first time the unprecedented commitment of the Minister for Interior, where people have been even extradited for being arrested for these things. It is for us to support and ensure that government is on course. We should not, just be calling for state of emergency. As a student of security, and Kabila is here, I'm sure that you agree. State of emergency is not something you just have to impose. Look, as we speak today, the forest reserves are a no-go area. You have seen the calculated, deliberate, surgical attack by the military on these places. As we speak, you have evidence that most of these forest reserves
Mr. wrap up on this
are being retrieved. And so where is the need for state of emergency when the internal systems to fight illegal mining is actually commitment, and that commitment is seen and is visible? Two, making sure that the institutions that are responsible are working, and those institutions are working more than they have worked before. Right. Would you say that we are not doing anything and that we should wake up and declare state of emergency when your dollar is coming down, when your economy is being revived, largely because of good regulations? So it's a matter that we need to handle with tact, carefulness, and all of that.
So you're saying that you're doing some work. The demands that the Ghanaian made,
yes,
we may not necessarily see that materialize, but you're doing the best that you can to fix the problem and then solve it in totality.
Ghanaians will see our river bodies being cleared up again. Ghanaians will see some sort of stability in terms of our mining industry.
You just said something that I think that you owe it to all of us and the listeners.
Yeah.
Which appointee of Akufo-Addo was involved in illegal mining?
What? Do you want us to go?
No, mention one.
No, are you there?
Are you there? I don't have to be their spokesperson.
But you are not their spokesperson.
Because you see, wait.
You want us to get into that conversation?
You see, I deliberately kept away from regime comparisons.
No, but that's what
when I was discussing that.
Yes.
Do you know why? In 2009, I sat in the office of Honorable Colin Zauda, who had then been made Minister for Natural Resources. When they signed, he had signed the final, they had, within that period, granted the mining lease to Newmont to mine into the Ajinwa Bipo Forest Reserve, which contained a royal cemetery for royal bodies to be excavated. So when we want to talk about this licensing to... I'm not digressing.
That's what you are doing.
I'm saying you just sat here.
2000, and we are talking about 2000 and this thing.
You talked about the past 8 years.
Ask if I could give you evidence of President.
Okay, so let's do it this way. Let's do it this way. He's looking... So, Dr. Bonfe, hold on for me. Let me do this for you. Mustafa, can you just name one person to satisfy one appointee of NPP who was involved in illegal mining?
Kabila wants us to get to that.
Mention one.
I'll decline his invitation, but I'm saying that.
But you did say right here that
I've said it.
Under his administration there were people involved in...
When I begin that conversation, it's a long topic to discuss.
It is not.
To name one person?
It is. You want to rubbish the topic, but I'm saying that if you want us to do regime comparison, let's come back here to name and shame. let's come back here to name. But I'm saying that President Akufo-Addo's regime had its appointees keenly involved.
But if you can't mention even one of the appointees, then it would be unfair to make the statement.
No, once we are not discussing that topic.
But you know that there are people in your administration too who they are pointing fingers at.
President Mahama is looking for those people. Mention their names.
There's the Alwyn MC also, who was a very topical one.
No,
what has happened to him as we speak?
That one was an issue where we all saw it. His constituents, had to block the military. For me, that is offensive conduct. But we don't have evidence that he was doing illegal mining.
All right. So let's move on. Our time is fast spent. There's a story. We have to go to Cape Coast now because over the weekend we saw that the Cape Coast Metropolitan Assembly were conducting some massive demolition exercise. We do have George Justice Arthur. He's the Metropolitan Chief Executive with us. But I just want to give you a bit of details because this is coming after the death of 2 elderly residents after a building collapsed in London Bridge, an area in Kotokraba, Cape Coast, during Saturday's heavy rains. And 3 other people have been injured and are responding to treatment so far. So that's what led to the massive demolition exercise. But Mr. Justice Arthur, since you're here with us, can you explain to us exactly the intention behind this demolition exercise that we are seeing right now?
Yeah, good morning to your wonderful listeners and your viewers.
Mr. Justice Arthur, we can hear you loud and clear. I think we have a connection problem. So he has a connection. Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're loud and clear.
Okay. Now, over the weekend, I would tell me that Black Saturday for we, the people of Cape Coast. It wasn't a good news that as a Metropolitan Chief Executive, I had to move to all these places to check whether or not the place are flooded or the citizenry are okay. So when I went there, there's this very burden, the burden that we are talking about. I visited that area where the burden is situated. Hello, can you hear me?
You're loud and clear. We are following your submission.
Okay, where the building is situated in Cape Coast at London Bridge. So I went there and the place is highly flooded. And the people over there, the occupants, were actually trying to, take the water out. So
Okay, I think we have to get you on phone because the Zoom is not very clear this morning. And we will come back to that story because they are saying they are working together with NADMO and other agencies to ensure Cape Coast is safe for living. But Noella, let's do one more story from your paper and then we can move on.
Okay, so there's another story here by the Pope, I believe, Pope Leo, who's urging politicians to respond to challenges posed by AI. I don't know if it's something we'd want to comment on. Obviously, we're in a digital era, and I think we've had conversations on, the advantages, disadvantages of AI, what it poses, the threat it poses, on even intellectual property. I mean, a lot of creatives have spoken out against some of these things, but he's warning politicians, in fact, he did on Saturday, of the challenges posed by the rise of artificial intelligence, addressing its potential impact on younger people as a prime concern. And he spoke on an event attended by Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and parliamentary delegations from 68 countries.
Okay.
But I believe we have to go back to Zoom or on the phone.
On the phone now.
To George Justice Arthur, who's the Metropolitan Chief Executive Cape Coast Metropolitan Assembly, and we're going to be speaking to him on the tragedy that happened over the weekend that involved the death of 2 elderly people following the collapse of a building. Sir, if you can hear me, you were speaking about what happened that led to the demolition of other buildings as well.
So as I was saying, I went there and I assured them that I would let NADMO and other agencies come into their rescue. So no sooner had I left, I think about 10 minutes, then I was called again because Cape Coast is very big. I ought to go to the other areas to check whether or not those people too are okay. So they called me that that particular building is collapsed. So I have to rush to that place and realize that about 5 people were under it. So as a chief executive, I have to call other agencies like NADMO, fire, police, and also make some tools and other, how do you call it, excavators and other things available so that they will be able to save them or evacuate or retrieve them from the place. Honestly, about 5 of them, 3 of them were able to be retrieved. And 2 of them, after we went through hassle to ensure they were also retrieved, they were elderly persons. They were actually passed on. So it was a sad event. It was a sad news for us. So they were sent to mortuary. 3 of them were also sent to hospital. As at now I'm speaking with you, they are receiving treatment at the hospital as I'm speaking with you.
So following that, 3 buildings have been demolished. That's at yesterday. I think Saturday rather, not Sunday. Who owns these buildings?
Yeah, if you come to Cape Coast, you realize that most of the buildings are ancient buildings. They were built from 1902, 18. So because Cape Coast is an ancient town with a lot of history. So they are, most of them are dilapidated. They are in dilapidated state.
Does it mean you don't know the owners of these buildings? You're saying that there are a lot of them in Cape Coast, so you don't know the owners.
We know them. We spoke with the owners that looking at the situation and trying to actually prevent this from happening again. We just have to talk to them to ensure that their burden is demolished. So they agreed to it. We built consensus. They agreed to it that we should do that. And that is how come we are trying to demolish most of the burden. And we are still talking to some others. As soon as they agree, we need to actually demolish all of them so that we have sanity in the metropolis.
But Mr. George, these buildings that have been demolished, before they did it have occupants? Mr. George?
I don't think we have Justice Arthur George with us, but when he joins us, we can pose that question to him again, whether or not, and also if we've seen the end of it, or are they going to demolish all the buildings there? Quick thoughts on these. We haven't spoken to Vicky Bright in a bit, so let's go there on Zoom and then we'll come back in studio. Vicky, I'm sure you have some thoughts to share following the conversation to this point. Drop a pin for us.
Yes, indeed. I mean, you know, first of all, I want to commend him for being proactive in demolishing these buildings. I also want to extend my condolences to the families of those, the 2 elderly ladies who passed on. You know, it goes back to us as a people needing to do things correctly, because some of these buildings, from what we understand, have just not followed building regulations and, you know, construction rules and laws in this country. They've just been built anyhow. And some of the foundations and the structures can't actually support the number of floors or whatever it is they're doing on those, you know, in constructing those buildings. So I think that if they carry on, I commend the MCE for what he's done and what he's doing. together with NADMO and I believe the fire service as well, for being proactive in demolishing these buildings before they harm other people, or even worse, they kill other people. And maybe, just maybe, that would be a lesson to others who are in the process of building without permits, or who just don't care about the fact that we have these laws in this country, because normally there are no consequences. You know, people do these things and they get away with it, so they keep doing it. But if they realize that if government finds out that you have built without the necessary permits, or your building is not structurally resilient, the building is going to be destroyed, proactively destroyed by government, then they'll think twice. Then I don't think anyone would tell them to go and hire the right people, get the right structural engineer, the right construction person to actually put these buildings up. So for me, I say, yes, you know, he has our full support, has my full support. And I think many, many more assemblies, many, many more MCs should follow his example. If buildings are structurally effective to the point that they can't be fixed, because sometimes when a building is not strong, I'm not a structural engineer, but I know that at least in the West, there's something called underpinning, so you can underpin the building.
Vicky, I need you to briefly hold your thoughts as we go back to Mr. George Justice, the MCE of Cape Coast, and get more details on the demolition exercise ongoing. Mr. George, welcome back. Before your line went off, I was asking whether the demolished buildings had occupants before they were demolished.
The one that was actually collapsed had occupants. So that one, nothing could be done about it, because half of it was collapsed and we need to demolish everything completely. But the other two, the one at Brofedo that we started demolition yesterday, had no occupant. That had been in deteriorating state for the past 10 years. So Assembly had engaged the family of this burden. So there were no occupants. Then the other one, there were occupants, and nothing could be done about it. We actually need to demolish it. But we engaged the family that we are giving them 24 hours to remove their items. Rather than that, they could also be in a bad position, and we could hear the same news. So nothing could be done other than to demolish these burdens. But we are still talking to the other family to build consensus so that we will be able to demolish.
So for Mr. George,
so to pose problems to the metropolis.
Okay. Now, for the occupants, both occupants and owners of these buildings, what's going to happen to them? Are there plans to compensate them of a sort going forward?
Yeah, actually, even the owners are even happy. Assembly has taken the bold step to demolish their dilapidated buildings, because they wanted to do so, but because of lack of resources. You know, if you are trying to demolish a building, it costs you a lot. And we are using a drip machine, just that we are actually buying a lot of fuel in that situation and in that circumstances. So they are happy that we are even demolishing their dilapidated burdens for them. But some other occupants, Assembly is trying to make provisions for them so that we will get them a temporary place, and in order for them to look for other accommodation to go. So they are happy about the situation. Okay.
All right, Sweetie, do you have...
No, so, well, thank you so much. When next should we expect more? You mentioned that you're going to be engaging some of these residents, and we will see some more demolition. You also said that there are a lot of these buildings in Cape Coast. So when next?
Oh, yeah, we are on it. Even today, we are still demolishing some. And in the coming days, NADMO, other security agencies, assembly building engineer, and all of them are engaging these people who have these sort of burdens, so that when we reach consensus, we will be able to also demolish all of them. So we are still talking to them, and it's a continuous something that we are doing as assembly.
Thank you, Judge Justice Arthur. Noel, I believe Vicky didn't complete her thoughts for us.
So let's go back to Vicky. Vicky, you can now complete what you were saying.
Oh, yeah, I was actually talking about underpinning when I had to go up. I had to pause. So yes, I think that there should be a general audit throughout the country, because it's not just in Cape Coast. This thing is everywhere, even in the capital, Accra, and in all these big cities. So I think the assemblies should do a general audit, and I think there should be a line, a kind of an open line of some sort. I wouldn't call it whistleblowing, but there should be a line where people can call if they see a dangerous or defective building. Because, assemblies don't have eyes everywhere and ears everywhere. They can only do so much because their resources are not infinite. So the people, we as Ghanaians should get involved in it. There should be an open line where you can call and say, and now, with the new GPS system, all buildings can be located in this country. So it doesn't have to be, that big name tree, you turn left, turn right, kind of direction. It can be actually quite precise and accurate.
Yeah.
So I think we should have that, and the assembly should do that. And there should be an audit of all these buildings. And those which can be underpinned should be underpinned. Those which are structurally defective beyond underpinning should just be destroyed. Because at the end of the day, what is it better to preserve, human life or property?
Right.
Definitely, human life has to come on top always. So, and also the same thing applies to these buildings and waterways and which are causing floods, because ultimately they're also killing people. Because if the water has nowhere to go, and we all know the perennial problems with floods in Ghana. People always die every year. Every single year without fail, people die. The only mitigation is how many people die, and it's not good enough. So we need to, it's something, these defective buildings is something that we need to address. And we need to address it in such a way that there's a deterrent for people to continue to build in that way. And just to engage in these kinds of practices.
Thank you, Vicky. Let's come back in studio for quick thoughts. There's a story I want to squeeze in because I see we're running out of time about the Bank of Ghana, but quick reflections on the demolition exercise, and then we get there. Mustafa, let's start with you.
But I think that what I had, I haven't gotten enough briefing on this.
Okay.
But certainly, the demolition is predicated on what has happened, and not necessarily the fact that the people have built without permits and regulations. But I think we need to commend the DC for taking the MC for that pragmatic steps to ensure that lives are not lost as a result of this, and also encourage more owners to buy into the vision and actually allow future deaths to be prevented by allowing their buildings, which is weak, to be taken out for new ones to be constructed. And so that's the little I can say about it.
Well, I think...
sorry, before Kobna comes in, I just wanted to say, I wasn't saying that they are all not getting permits to build. I said that there were various causes. Some were getting permits but not building in the way in which they are supposed to do, and others were just flagrantly disregarding the law. I just wanted to correct that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it brings to mind that body, is it land use and spatial body? I've forgotten their initials, but town and country building outfit, and how they are realigned to take a look at some of our very old cities. If you take Cape Coast, Takoradi, and Accra, you go to some areas around Jamestown, and even Okenshi, Accra proper, some of the buildings are quite old. It will be important that our engineers are able to take up architectural integrity assessments to see whether they are still performing or living up to, the purpose. Don't forget that we have sometimes also allowed for extensions to buildings that are not part of their original architectural designs. And when you walk through town, you see some of them. So maybe this is an issue that should draw our minds to go back into that and how they are performing.
Okay.
As Mustafa said, I think that the MCE I want to believe he wasn't working in isolation. There's a department in the assembly that may have gone into this. And never forget that this comes under the national security considerations. So we would want to believe that whatever preparatory work that were necessary to accommodate the people temporarily were done, and that there is a way to get back those structures properly put together in conjunction with the families, so that, you pull down the buildings.
Government will end up taking responsibility for everything anybody
No, Mustafa, get my point right.
Yeah.
When I am talking about architectural integrity assessment,
Yes.
I am talking within the framework of stakeholder engagement. This is an issue. The assembly has found that your building has certain defects, or it is long enough, it ought to be renovated in a certain manner. Get their input. You'll be shocked that some of them may even have been considering that they want to undertake.
That's what
he has said.
Exactly. So what I'm talking about is not for government to come and assume responsibility to build for people. It's about engaging and see how best things can be done. And you see, the people, if they were occupied, I didn't hear that part. If some
he said somewhere. Yeah,
somewhere.
Yeah.
If the people were occupied, the buildings were occupied, the people will have to be temporarily housed.
Yeah. Well, he mentioned that there are plans in place.
Absolutely. So in between, you see, when you are government, you have an overarching responsibility. That's why you are government. So you can't run away from
But Mustafa, what's the concern?
No, I'll leave it.
That government can't absorb.
You don't have to argue on everything.
You see,
it may be operationally difficult, but
the paper you have, I want to move the conversation forward. You have the Daily Guide. There's a big story there, which was very topical. And that sack or termination or non-confirmation of these contracts take effect today. So let's get into that story, please.
Well, I think I've seen it and I've read it.
So that's a Daily Guide, but for the benefit of our audience who may not know, just what the headline is.
BOG sacks 100 staffs. That is it. I've said that. I think this is a very...
In fact, let me help you with the details so we can situate it right. So it says more than 100 staff members of the Bank of Ghana have had their appointments terminated in a sweeping administrative move, which the government claims as part of an ongoing effort to streamline public sector engagement made after the 2024 general elections. And I continue to say that the affected workers who were recruited in 2024 received official dismissal letters on Thursday, June 19, 2025.
So is it a question of probation period over, non-confirmation, and so you proceed to exit the company? Or is it part of a broader agenda to sack or lay off all those who were, engaged in the erstwhile administration's final days?
No,
Which is it?
This is what I heard from the governor of the Bank of Ghana clearly is different from what we all advocated for, including myself. If you were a public sector worker and you expose yourself so much to politics such that you get involved to the disadvantage of the services you have to be rendering, and persons who were appointed ran up to elections and during the transition period to be sacked, that is entirely different from this one. What I heard the Bank of Ghana said was that these people were on probatory, contracts or engagements, and per their own assessment, the Bank of Ghana's assessment, they did not meet the requisite standard that one could be permanently engaged, and so they had to terminate. And we all know that is the effect of being on probation. If you have served the probatory period and you have given unsatisfactory, output, I'm sure that the employer would then decide your fate, which is what has happened. It is not the case that the Bank of Ghana is just laying people out, because clearly the Bank of Ghana in the last 8 years didn't just employ 100 staffs. They've employed quite a huge number. And so for 100 to be laid off on that grounds, for me, gives a clear distinction between what laying someone who was employed during and after election, and also somebody who have not, been able to meet a particular standard of human resource requirements of the Bank of Ghana. And you all know that the Bank of Ghana is a serious place for all of us, where skill set and professionalism is placed very high. So if you don't meet the requirements...
But what do you make of, other people also saying that this sack could be politically motivated, since these, workers were employed during the previous government?
You cannot take that consideration that it could be politically motivated. I don't see us, or I don't see anybody trying to run away from that allegation. But as we stand, the facts on the table is that the Bank of Ghana have come out to clarify and indicated that these persons, or these 100 persons, individuals, didn't meet the standard or the criteria of human resource requirement after probation periods, and so you have to go. The question then is, did they only employ 100 people at the Bank of Ghana? The answer is no. A lot of people were employed. What about the rest? Were they not employed by the previous regime? Why are they not sacking all of them, but yet sacking only 100?
Over 100, not 100 precisely.
These persons, we are told, were all serving probatory periods or probatory services or engagements. And after their probation, if they are assessed and they didn't meet the standard, it's just fair that we can agree that banking is banking and Bank of Ghana is Bank of Ghana. They have the right to appoint. They also have the right to lay off based on unsatisfactory, service or output. And so I'll leave it as that. Those who hold to read the political lines, you cannot avoid reading political lines, because a political party gave birth to government. Certainly NPP was a political party. They are out of government. And so one will be tempted to feel that it's because these persons were employed during the era of the NPP. But I don't think that is the case, because the governor spoke to a particular practice that we all know. It happens here in Joy FM. It happens everywhere. If you are on probation and you don't, meet the requirement, the satisfactory service requirement, it was the duty of the employer to decide how to invest their money in human resource.
Okay. Mr. Bonfa, you've been smiling while he made his...
Oh, not necessarily too. Somebody said I was looking too serious. I've seen a friend of mine. So.
Okay. You're watering it down now.
As far as I'm concerned, there are rules and regulations guiding every recruitment process. I think there's a point Mustafa made. Almost every recruitment comes with probations. You need to justify your inclusion even when you have been given an employment letter to the agency or institution or organization. So the terms are there. I don't have the details and the grounds on which whatever termination has been done. Those affected can go back and study the regulations they applied on. If their termination, the termination of their appointments violate any process or procedure, or the governor and his people are acting contrary to Article 296 of our Constitution 1992, they should exercise their rights at law. Go to the courts. I am an activist of constitutional law. And I believe that sometimes we need to test the law.
A consultant on demonstrations.
To see how our persons who are occupying offices are acting, and right or wrong. That is how we deepen our democracy. That said, I want to believe that the governor and his team are also very much aware of the task ahead of them. He himself, I was reading somewhere, had been at the Bank of Ghana previously.
Yeah.
And then something happened that his appointment was truncated or something.
About 8 years ago, right?
To that effect.
Siama.
And he has come back. My advice to him is that people who suffer injustice, even though they don't always end up being advocates of justice, must necessarily become advocates of justice, so that we can see that what they experience, or if there was indeed injustice in his case, he would not have to extend it to others.
Okay.
You have situations where people who have suffered injustice then become, you know...
Yeah, they say hurt people,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to believe our governor
would do that. Well, we have a lawyer among us, so let's hear from her now. Vicky Bright, what do you say on this mass dismissal or termination of probation contracts from over 100 people at Bank of Ghana? What do you say to this?
Well, you know, my basic starting point is that every employer has the right to hire and fire, as long as they are respecting the terms of the contract and the law, you know, employment laws in Ghana. According to the Bank of Ghana, they have retained more than half of the appointees of the previous government. So I would like to believe that this was really genuinely done in accordance with their own evaluation processes and practices. They have said that they conducted extensive reviews and evaluations of each of those employees, and for whatever reason, they didn't find them, you know, able to meet those criteria. And I'm sure that this is documented somewhere. So if anyone doubts it, they probably have the right, they should have the right to see what the reasons behind their particular termination is. So I don't want to politicize it, because we are in the habit of politicizing everything in this country. And I think it's not helping us very much. So I would like to believe in the integrity of the Bank of Ghana and the governor, and say that, look, they have retained more than half of the people. So clearly some of the people were found to be satisfactory and others were not, for whatever reason. So we just need to, like any other employer, we just need to respect their decisions, as long as they haven't violated the terms of the individual contracts concerned, and also the employment laws, the labor laws of Ghana. I'm okay with that.
Thank you so much. I think we have time for one last story.
Yeah.
Noella?
We can take a look at the story that happened over the weekend concerning the OSP and Professor Jampo following an interview he granted on a TV station. I think key point.
Okay.
So it says a public spat has erupted between the Office of the Special Prosecutor and the Acting Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Shippers Authority, Dr. Ransford Jampo, and the confrontation followed comments made by the Dr. Jampo, I beg your pardon, during a TV appearance regarding the ongoing corruption probe involving former Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. In a strongly worded statement issued on Saturday, the OSP, I beg your pardon, refuted suggestions made by Dr. Jampo on TV3's Key Point program that its investigation into Mr. Ofori-Atta was driven by a personal vendetta. And to be fair, I watched that interview. To be fair, to a large extent, Professor Jampo spoke, you know, for the OSP, talked about how he supports, you know, what he's doing, going after people involved in suspected corruption issues. And I want to quote him verbatim, what he says. It says, "I'm happy that the OSP's intentions are also genuine and I'm hoping, I beg your pardon, that the OSP's intentions are also genuine and not driven by personal interest, vendetta, and also the need for a certain regime's job security.
Okay.
Which is very interesting that he said that. And his reason for saying that is simple, that he has seen the OSPs also radically go after cases similar to that of Ken Ofori-Atta, citing Cecilia Dapa. And so he's hoping, and obviously in his words, these cases amounted to nothing.
Yeah.
And so he's wondering what really might be the motivation, and saying he's hoping it's not born out of, personal interest.
Okay.
Mustafa, do you have anything to say to that?
I think that basically, look, we are in a country where we ourselves have taken for granted what our democratic credentials are, i.e. the quest for self-enrichment, dealing with corruption-related matters, and how we compromise the credibility of our state institutions. If for nothing at all, I want to say that because of the privilege I have gotten to serve both in a political party and even in a government structure, we should ensure that there is so much deterrence. It is not every politician that is corrupt. It is not also every public servant that is clean. We should have a system where institutions are able to work effectively to have enough deterrence for corrupt practices. Our country is sinking day in, day out because we have allowed what is corruption-related to flourish. I have had issues with regards to the commitment of the OSP and its office in terms of what they've been able to do. We are all also aware of the past records that even when the OSP decided to align with the judiciary to fight and prosecute some of these matters, publicly he came out to speak about how he was being frustrated within the judiciary with judges involved. So we cannot at the same time approbate and reprobate. And the fact that there is job security is not enough to dine with corruption or a certain scandal that is stinking and shortchanges the Ghanaian people. Whoever benefits from a scandal is himself part of the scandal. And so let us allow the OSP to do its work. Look, I have said, if for nothing, and it's not revenge, the way Ken Ofori-Atta treated people in this country, if not for nothing, he should make himself available, and perhaps he's done nothing wrong. Perhaps whatever all of us are saying may not really, in the face of the laws, amount to some crime. He should make himself available. If tomorrow there's a reason for myself or Kabila to appear and be tested with the law, we would appear because we have done one thing or the other. And Ken Ofori-Atta should not be given a different treatment. We are all sick sitting here, maybe, but we are still in our country. We are still battling whatever we have.
I'm not sick.
Well, I mean, so, yeah, of course. We are still ready and prepared any day, any time to make ourselves available. Let Ken Ofori-Atta make himself available. Let the laws work. We should stop.
I want to pick your thoughts quickly on something you said, that you've had a chance to serve in a political party and in a government structure.
Yeah.
So having the experience of both sides, would you say that the people are right, the people who criticize the way the OSP is going about his dealings in recovering all loot and the rest, that there might be some political coloration in there? I mean, if you look at the way, well, I can't call them raid because eventually they'll come out and say that they had warrants, so they were executing such warrants. But it's always almost carried out in a way that you think there's some vendetta that they want to execute. Do you see the wisdom in the people or those who criticize the OSP, why they would say that?
I do see, because, look, I campaigned throughout the constituencies in Ghana in the run-up of election. One of the main issues and the reasons Ghanaians voted for the NDC was our preparedness to fight corruption. Every Ghanaian believed that there's something wrong managing our government system and it needs to be cleaned up. the expectation is that the OSP must be up and doing. He must vindicate the reasons why people advocated for that office to be created. And I think so far, he has not been able to prove that to the ordinary Ghanaian. He hasn't convinced Ghanaians that he's a partner in meeting their expectations when they actually see and experience corruption. And the OSP have come into those matters, and it ends up that for a period of time, nothing comes out. I think Ghanaians have a cause of concern. And I'm saying that this country, we all have to make sure that if you have had to do something, you put the Ghanaian people first. If we allow corruption to continue, I can tell you, this will probably be the last government regime that will be tolerated by the people of Ghana if corruption intermeddles in this government.
All right.
And we allow it to fester and to still exist. We should do everything possible to fight it head on without political consideration, so that whether you are MPP, you are NDC, and you have had the opportunity to serve in a government structure, your focus should be serving the people other than serving yourself. If we don't do that, we are in trouble. Our democracy will be in trouble. No Ghanaian will tolerate anything called a political party or a government in the future very close to us.
So unfair.
You know, sometimes you wonder what to say. How does conducting an investigation rely on the investigated to establish guilt or a basis to go after the person alleged of that offense? How does? You see, sometimes we have to be very careful in this country. The fact that I say I'm conducting an investigation on an alleged corruption doesn't mean that the person is already guilty of corruption. It's sometimes our narratives that deepen these perceptions of corruption. And it is done by public office holders, people in the public space. I have a problem with that. How does investigating Ken Ofori-Atta by the OSP, problematic as that office itself is, and I've talked about the unconstitutionality of creating that office. It's an amendment of Article 88, which can only be done. Please, I'm saying, listen to me. The amendment of Article, I've not gone to court on that, but you don't have to always go to court with your beliefs. You can express them. Maybe someday I will go on that. But the point I'm making is that amending Article 88 is very clear. It is an entrenched provision. You can't do it with an act of parliament. It must come to the people through a referendum. But that is not the point of discussion this morning. The OSP, I have still not been able to understand how the conduct of his investigations into whatever charge or allegation will depend on he meeting Ken Ofori-Atta to be able to carry out that investigation.
There are questions Ken needs to answer.
In
order for them to conclusively or comprehensively...
But that's the point. You are working on your suspicion against me. You want me to aid you
Why
to
is it
lock
what
me?
we call rules of natural justice also?
Hold on,
call the person to answer for the crimes that they...
So when you call me and I have not appeared before you, you make it look like my non-appearance to you is escaping justice. Go to court.
But there were several instances where he was given the opportunity to show up. At some point, he himself gave them a date and couldn't show up. Then it gives you the impression that he's running away from answering questions that the whole state is waiting for us to get answers.
So that is where the problem is. What answers is the whole state waiting to get answers? I mean, what questions?
They have listed it. There's the SML deal, there's the National Cathedral. We just need answers because he was the leader of the entity. It brings me to something here. Go on, I'll find it for you. The inconvenience.
So my point is very simple. That at the end of the day, if there's anything untoward that has been found, you need to go ahead and prosecute it. Ken Ofori-Atta cannot decline an invitation to court. If he does that, the court can find him guilty.
In fact, on that, lawyer Martin Pibble mentioned that, in fact, to quote him verbatim, he says, it would have been wiser of the OSP to have taken Ken's offer to actually, interrogate him virtually.
Absolutely.
And the reason he gives is that it would have given the OSP an opportunity to get his caution and charge statement so he can be trialed in absentia.
Yeah.
But for me, that's not even the point. That at the end of the day, when you go to court, then the man has a right to appear. Failure to appear, he will be found guilty of contempt of the court. But to try a case in an investigative manner, as if
you're not trying the case. You talked about narratives, so I want us to...
Exactly the point I'm making.
The case.
I disagree with him strongly.
You don't have to agree with me, Mustafa. I sat here, I listened to you. You were talking as if Ken Ofori-Attah's non-appearance before the OSP meant that he was already guilty of corruption.
No.
We must read our public space with...
He's deliberately avoiding being interrogated. That is what it means.
And I'm saying
that is what it means. Is he bigger
the right to be...
This kind of right bigger than the law. Does it mean that the right to be investigated is unlawful?
Mustafa.
Does it mean that...
How about we listen to the lawyer and then give you time to cool off? So, Vicky Bright, you have the final say on this matter. Whether or not the OSP's outfit...
what about that?
Dr. Bonfe says he still can't find the wisdom in establishing that entity. Mr. Mustafa Gbande is saying that he's still not impressed in terms of bringing finality to most of the cases that appear on their docket. What do you say, especially on the topic of, Noel, I believe it was about the political coloration of the way the OSP is going about some of his duties?
I don't see any political coloration in the way he's going about his business. If you look at his mandate, he's just fulfilling the mandate, and he should be allowed to do so. He should be allowed to do so because I agree with Mustafa in the sense that, look, corruption is killing our country. It really is. And I'm not saying that Ken is corrupt or otherwise because I don't know the full facts. But what I am saying is that if you're a public official, you've sworn in an oath, you're in office, you have controlled our public finances over an 8-year period, and you are required to come and answer questions, then you should make it easy to answer those questions, to the questions. That is what I think. Because once you accept, you have to accept that once you occupy any position of any public office, let me put it that way, you have actually agreed for greater scrutiny than would be on you or I, and so there will, by necessity, be some kind of level of erosion and to your rights or whatever. It doesn't mean that your human rights or your legal rights should be flouted, but there will be a greater degree of scrutiny than for ordinary people. So that's the starting point. He's following his mandate. There are questions to be answered. He's put those questions there. Look, Interpol is not in the business of just naming people willy-nilly just because someone's told them to do so. There are certain conditions you have to meet before they put you on that list because it's a very serious matter. It's not a joke. It's a very, very serious matter. So the fact that they have deemed it fit that that Ken should qualify to be on that list also speaks, volumes. So we shouldn't say the OSP is on some kind of vendetta. And this question about trying to protect his job, he's a lawyer, for God's sake. He can work anywhere. He can always earn a living as a lawyer. So it should not be reduced. Let's not reduce the discourse to that level. And the serious is in any event, it's not just the OSP. My understanding is that there are other agencies, security agencies, that would also like to have a chat with Ken. All right. Like you have it. So let's look at the facts of the matter. Let's look at and one more thing I'd like to say. This question about the OSP, and it's not just him, the previous one as well, them not delivering. And we need to be cautious when we make that statement because you need government support to do your work if you're in that situation. And consistently, they have both said that they were literally working with one or both hands tied behind their backs. So this is a government that I see is willing to support in the fight against corruption. So let us see how the OSP performs being given a free hand to fight corruption. If he still can't deliver, then we can have that conversation. And in the Cecilia Dapa case, my understanding is that the case has been reopened. I don't know if someone can tell me whether that's the case or not, but
I can
confirm
that as we speak, yeah.
That it's been reopened. So
okay.
let's just hold our horses and see what happens. We
All
were
right.
all very surprised about the so-called outcome of that case, because looking at what we saw and the outcome, we were all sort of sitting there with our jaws ajar. So let's just hold our horses and see what happens. But as far as I'm concerned,
yeah,
he's not doing anything wrong so far.
Thank you so much. You just heard the Victoria Bright. She's a lawyer and entrepreneur. And in studio, we have Dr. Kwabena James Bonfe Jr., he's CEO of Census, and of course, Mustafa Gbande is Deputy Director of Operations at the Office of the Presidency. Noella, looks like we had a great conversation.
We did,
very insightful. You should be increasing the time.
Yeah.
To be able to discuss these matters into details. Because what my brother just sat here and did in the last few minutes is contrary to what he believes.
I wish we could listen to you even more, but that's our time. That's our time.